All right, so today we're diving into a book that's, well, it's more than a book. It's a phenomenon. Walter Isaacson's official biography of Steve Jobs. But here's the twist. Instead of just my take on it, we're going to dig into what over 1 million readers thought to really get a handle on the man and the book that tells his story.
And wow, look at these numbers. Seriously, they're staggering. We're talking more than 1.3 million ratings, and it averages out to a 4.15 out of 5. Almost 80% of people gave it 4 or 5 stars. So clearly this book hit home for a lot of people. But the real story, the interesting part, is why.
Because once you start reading the reviews, one thing becomes crystal clear. Everyone is wrestling with this massive contradiction. Was Steve Jobs a brilliant, world-changing genius? Or was he a complete and utter tyrant? Or, somehow, was he both of those things at the exact same time? This is the big question the book makes you ask yourself.
Okay, so let's start with a side of Steve Jobs that pretty much everyone agrees on, even the people who couldn't stand him, the visionary. The guy who really did see the future and then, went out and built it.
You hear this phrase a lot in the reviews, the reality distortion field. It was his superpower. This wasn't just being a good salesman. It was this intense force of will, this charisma, that could convince a room full of brilliant engineers that something totally impossible was, in fact, not only possible, but something they had to do right now.
And this quote, which comes up all the time, is the key to his whole way of thinking. He wasn't interested in focus groups. He thought his job was to create the thing you didn't even know you wanted yet. He basically said that if Henry Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have just said, a faster horse.
And this just shows you the sheer scale of his impact. According to the book, he completely upended 6 whole industries. Think about it. Personal computers, animated movies with Pixar, the entire music business with the iPod and iTunes, phones, tablets, and digital publishing. It's a legacy that's almost hard to comprehend.
But for every one of those stories of incredible innovation, the reviews are just packed with stories of him being cruel, petty, and unbelievably arrogant. And this is where the simple picture of a genius gets really, really messy.
Reviewers are absolutely in awe of what he built. You see comments like this one from Stephanie all the time. He created the most amazing things. People talk about their first Mac or their first iPod like it was a religious experience.
But then, in the very next sentence, that same exact reviewer says this. And that right there sums up the feeling of so many readers. You have to hold these two totally opposite ideas in your head at the same time. The products were pure genius, but the man, well, he was just incredibly difficult.
And we're not just talking about him being a tough boss. The reviews bring up his personal cruelty, and the biggest example is his refusal to admit he was the father of his first daughter, Lisa. He denied it for years, even after a paternity test proved it. For a lot of readers, that's a detail that's just impossible to get past.
And the stories just keep coming. Reviewers list them out. How he'd publicly humiliate engineers by calling their work shit. How he'd cry in meetings to get what he wanted. He even believed his strict diet meant he didn't need to shower. And he famously cheated one of his oldest friends, Steve Wozniak, out of money. The list goes on and on.
So, okay, you have this subject who is equal parts brilliant and monstrous. How in the world do you write a book about that? This is the next big thing readers talk about. How good is the biography itself? One reviewer, Lisa, gives us a great way to think about it. She says a good biography needs these 3 things. Number 1, a compelling subject? Yeah, check. Steve Jobs is about as compelling as it gets. But what about the other 2?
And this is where readers are totally split. On the one hand, tons of people loved it. They say it reads like a thriller, and it's so well researched, with over 100 interviews. They give Isaacson credit for showing the good and the bad. But on the other hand, a lot of people felt like the book wasn't totally objective. They mention an apologetic tone, like Isaacson was trying to excuse Jobs' terrible behavior because he was a genius. Some also point out that big chunks of his career, like his time at Next, feel kind of rushed.
So after all this, after 600 pages of brilliance and brutality, what's the final verdict? What do readers think is the lasting legacy of Steve Jobs, at least as it's told in this book? What's pretty amazing is that even with all his flaws, so many people walk away from this book feeling inspired. They pull out these powerful lessons. It's all about focus, about simplicity. It's about surrounding yourself with only the absolute best people and pushing them to do things they didn't think they could do.
And maybe most of all, it's about this idea that real magic happens when you combine technology with art and the humanities.
And maybe there's no quote in the whole book that's more powerful than this one, which Jobs told Isaacson near the end of his life. Right there, he connects his product design philosophy directly to his own thoughts on death. That obsession with seamless design, it wasn't just about making things look cool. It was deeply, deeply personal.
In the end, the book and all the reviews leave you with this really big, uncomfortable question. Did he have to be a monster to be a genius? Was all that cruelty just the price the world had to pay to get the iPhone? The book lays out all the evidence for you, but it doesn't give you an easy answer. That's for you to decide.